This is the Heather Patero Show, where conversation meets calling. Well, hey guys, it's Heather Patero. I am so excited about today's show. Today's guest is an author, an attorney, a former elected official, a festival founder, a husband, a father, and a man who has somehow managed to visit 96 countries. Meanwhile, some of us feel accomplished when we remember why we walked into the kitchen. He is the founder and president of the Word of South Festival of Literature and Music in Tallahassee, Florida. It's a festival that brings writers and musicians together in ways that don't always fit neatly into either a traditional literary festival or a traditional music festival. He has also written 3 novels. His newest novel, Boy with Wings, follows a young man born with mysterious wing-like appendages who becomes part of a traveling show in the Depression-era South. It is imaginative, unsettling, tender, and deeply human. And beneath that unusual premise is a question nearly all of us have faced in one form or another. What happens when the thing that makes us different becomes the very thing the world uses to define us? My guest today is Mark Mustian, and yes, before this conversation is over, I intend to determine whether visiting 96 countries represents curiosity, bravery, or simply an intense unwillingness to stay home. Mark, welcome to the Heather Patero Show.
Well, thanks, Heather. Thanks for having me. I feel like I hardly need to say anything after that introduction. So thank you for that.
Well, I've been told many times I'm a great PR person at the beginning, so that's what I'm here for.
You are.
Well, for anyone just meeting you, your life can sound like several different people accidentally sharing one biography. I mean, you've been a lawyer, an elected official, novelist, festival founder, husband and father of 3, traveler to 96 countries. So when someone at a dinner party asks what you do, where do you even begin?
Well, that's changed over the years, but I'd say I start out with I'm a writer. That's what I do really the most of now, and it's what I like doing the most. And so I write every day. I wrote this morning, and that's what I've done for probably over 20 years now. And I've been fortunate to be able to do a lot of things. So I've been a lawyer during that time as well, and we started this festival as well. So I've been very lucky and fortunate, and people have been very kind to me, including my law partners and people that helped us start the festival and people that have published my books and read them. So I feel very blessed.
Oh, that's awesome. You know, I'm a songwriter, and one of the tips of the trade that I had a mentor tell me is you need to write every day. Even if it's just a chorus or a verse or a line of poetry or whatever you're doing to keep that skill sharp. So do you think that's a good habit as a writer?
Well, it works really well for me. I mean, I've talked to other writers, and everybody sort of does it a different way. I mean, I know some writers that they sit down and write, 6 hours every day at a desk, and that wouldn't be fun for me. That would be too much like a job. And so I just try and do it in bits and pieces. Sometimes I said, I just want to do a paragraph here. Let me get this done. And then I try in the mornings to write for about an hour or so. And that I've done it for a long time, and it sort of keeps my head in the story during the day, and I'll think about stuff. Like I went out today and took the kayak out, and I'm thinking in the middle of the lake, oh my, yeah. I don't have my phone. I got to remember this, write this down. But it's stuff like that. It works for me.
That's awesome. Well, outside of the births of your children, you said you can remember exactly where you were when you learned that each of your 3 novels would be published.
Well, yeah, and so as a writer, and you probably experienced this some too as a songwriter. I mean, the books become like your children. I mean, I've spent each of these novels that have been published, I've spent years of my life working on, and so it's very important, and it can also be very frustrating if somebody that you've spent years on something, and somebody in the space have looked at it for an hour or less. And says like, well, not for me, and so So it's really, really nice when somebody finally says, yeah, I get it. I want this, And so, yeah, I remember, I mean, the first book I was in my law office and the lady called and said, well, she says, Mark, we have your manuscript. She says, would you like us to publish it? I'm like, that's why I sent it to you. And so that was published by a small press in Florida. And then the second time was published by Penguin, one of the, the big five publishers. And I remember my agent called me and says, hey, there's a publisher starting a new imprint. And I think she wants to make an offer, and she wants to talk to you first. I'm like, okay. So we have a phone call. She said, this was the day after Valentine's Day. She said, you ruined my Valentine's Day because I was reading your book all day. And so I said, well, sorry about that. But that was super nice. And then my last book, saying my agent called, says, hey, I think somebody's really excited. They want to make an offer. I'm like, great, let's do it. So again, it's very, it's a that and the moment when you actually hold the book in your hand are really special moments. So yeah, so I've been, again, very grateful to have had these published. I hope I can have a bunch more.
Yeah. Well, you named perseverance as the through line that has quietly appeared throughout your life. And part of that began with your high school band director. I love that, especially as a music teacher. Tell us about that.
Yes, I played the trumpet in the Leon High marching band for 4 years, and I was never very good. I never progressed much beyond, I think, third chair or something. But I enjoyed it. I mean, and Heather, I mean, it's hard to describe what making music with other people is like. And we had a great band and a great director, and so it was just magical. And I heard I was in the quick story. I was in the line at Starbucks, the drive-through the other day, and I'm listening to the classical music channels on radio, and he plays the song, the title Jupiter from the Planets from Holst,
Oh, yeah.
and that was what we played in the state championship. It's like emotional for me. I'm pulling up to the drive-through, like, can you give me a minute? It's just, it's hard to describe, but it's a so the band director was a very tough guy, but I learned so much from him. And first, I was there for 4 years, so I had him, and there were several things that he said. One is he said that, that things that are really worth having, you have to work hard for.
Amen to
And,
that.
and that was, I found that to be very, very true in my life. And then the other one he said, it doesn't matter what I think of what you've done or what your parents think or what anybody else thinks. Are you happy with what you've done? And again, I think that was super good advice.
Yeah. Well, and I think people forget they try so hard to make other people happy, and then they forget the one person that they should look at probably in the mirror first and say, am I happy with this? Is this what I want for my life?
Well, it's carried over for me and writing. So in Boy with Wings, the way the book is structured is a little bit unusual. And the boy Johnny, the boy with has the wings, his parts of the book are written in a third person point of view. And the others, there are a number of others of people that Johnny meets in different chapters, and they're written from a first person point of view. And people had told me, oh, you shouldn't do this. This is, blah, blah, blah. And I tried it different ways. I mean, I flip flopped it. I did everybody first person, everybody third person. But I came back to the way I'd started with it because it was more of what I wanted to do. And it felt right. And I, in the book, I mean, people don't know what Johnny is. Here's this guy with wings. Is this an angel? Is this a devil? I mean, what is this? And so there's a religious part of the book. And if if you're a Christian and or even if you're not, God, Jesus are always a little bit removed, and so that I wanted that you learn from Johnny from what other people are telling you about him to some extent. So anyway, that was sort of, that I just felt like I wanted to be happy with it. And that was the way I was happy with it.
Sure. Well, speaking of happy, does this book end with a happy ending?
Well, I think so. Yeah, I've had other people, friends of mine, tell me, well, Mark, you seem like such a normal guy, and book is kind of dark. I said, well, it's not that dark. But there's an interesting thing. Americans in particular love happy endings. And so if you read literature or watch movies from other parts of the world, they're a little less happy endings. And I like happy endings. I mean, Dorothy makes it home and Toto, and
That's
so
right.
that's what we've grown up with. And so
Right.
I like that, but I try and make mine, sort of happy, and not, it goes where it goes. But I sort of dislike books that wrap things up too perfectly and it's all in a bow. And that doesn't seem like real life to me. And it sort of takes me out of the interest really.
Yeah. Well, life doesn't always end happy. Life doesn't always have a satisfying ending, and circumstances, they weave through our life. Sometimes it's just satisfactory. It's not always happy, but it's a satisfactory ending. And I'm sure you've made sure that the book had an ending that we could live with.
Well, I think so. I mean, again, they were all what made sense to me in terms of the story, and I mean, I'm sure people have written treatises about this that I haven't read, but I mean, if you look at Shakespeare, I mean, the ones that stand out are the tragedies. It's
Mm,
Macbeth, it's Hamlet, it's King
right.
Lear, less than the comedies. So I just, it's a, I mean, what's interesting. My wife and I, we both read a lot, and we have similar tastes but not exactly, and if something's too sad she doesn't want to read it.
Mm.
And so that doesn't bother me as much, but I'll tell her. She goes, well, what about this one? I'm like, it's really sad. She's like, thanks, next. It's,
You taste it for her, right? You test it
well,
for
no, her point was, hey, there's enough sadness in the world. I
her.
don't,
Right.
I don't need to spend my time, making myself more sad.
Right.
So I get that, but again, I just like books that are, show real life with real
Sure.
people.
Well, and I think people, especially nowadays, really like the escapism in a little bit. But good stories don't always have to be tidy to be true. And there's an unresolved discomfort that kind of makes you long for what's next. It's kind of like why we like procedurals, on television. The story's not finished in a tidy little hour. We have to watch next week, and the next week and the next week.
Well, and I think also, I mean, what I've tried to do, and plays into that, is distinguish myself and my writing from. I mean, I'm not trying to be like anybody else, and this goes with Word of South, the festival, also, which we could talk about in a
Hmm.
minute. But our goal is just to be different. We don't want to be like anybody else. We're our own thing. And so in my book, The Gendarme, that was the one that was published by Putnam, a part of Penguin. That was all about the Armenian genocide. And my heritage way back is Armenian, and I never knew much about it. And so I ended up writing the book, and it got a big reception because it was different, because I wrote it from the point of view of a Turkish gendarme, a policeman that was
Mm.
escorting these Armenians out of the country at the beginning of World War One. And that really hadn't been done before. And so that's what I've taken from that is just I want to just try and do something that's a little bit, if something flipped on its head or done differently. And Word of South, we could talk about briefly, is so that's a festival we started in 2015, and it came about because when the Gendarme was published, I got invited to speak at these literary festivals around the country, and I'd never been to one, and I thought, man, this is great. We should do this in Tallahassee. And I was on the city commission in Tallahassee then. I said, I probably need to get off the commission before I, try and do this. And so I did, and eventually got it going. And we talked about, well, rather than just being the Tallahassee version of the South Carolina Literary Festival, why don't we try and do something different? And so we talked about, well, you could do books in the environment, books in the arts, but books and music seemed almost the easiest thing to do. And so we did. We had this just bang up lineup the first year. We'd accumulated money for 2 years, and then it rained all weekend. But we've managed to keep it going, and because we figured we sort of had something, something unique. And so we're entering our 13th year next year, and there's really nothing like this in the country. And so we bring in, people who have written about music, musicians who have written books. We pair authors and musicians who some have never met each other. So it's really, really cool. And it's called Word of South. It's every April in Tallahassee. The structure is there's a ticketed show, a music show Friday night in the amphitheater, and then it's free all weekend. There's like 50 different events on different stages. And so you can go on the website, it's wordofsouthfestival.com, and see past, who's there. Last year it was Earth, Wind, and Fire was the Friday night act, and then we had all sorts of great, authors and musicians. We had Richard Powers. We have a whole jazz thing every Sunday afternoon with just, I mean, major world class people for free. So it's really a cool thing. It's really worth checking out sometime.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Well, let's go back to Boy with Wings. At the center of it is Johnny Cruel, a boy born with mysterious appendages that develop into what appear to be wings. He eventually becomes part of a traveling show in the Depression era South. Without giving away what readers should discover for themselves, where did Johnny first come from in your imagination?
Well, it was probably so as a child in Tallahassee. I grew up in Tallahassee. Every year we would, and come October, the North Florida Fair would come into town. And so we would trek out there, like early as elementary school. And there would always be like these sideshows, like big, kind of garish signs, see the world's smallest horse, or, see the wild man from Borneo that'll chase you around. And so I was always just sort of, I don't know, fascinated by that. Now I know, and I just eventually had this idea to want to write about that. And so I've done a lot of research, and I've read, there's a particular book that is well worth reading for anyone who hasn't read it, called Geek Love, that was written in the 80s, that was just, sort of described this in a very interesting way. And so I said, well, I'd like to do something but different from that. And so I was trying to figure out what to do. And eventually I hit on this idea and wrote the book. And I had wanted to interview a current sideshow performer because, and I couldn't find anybody. I had, you know, I, there were, a lot of circuses and sideshows wintered in Florida. And so there's the American Sideshow Museum down by Tampa. And so I'd been down there, talked to the people there, trying, I just can't get any response. And so I'd written the book at this point, and I, of all things, I see there's a sideshow coming to Tallahassee. I'm like, oh, great! So I sign up for the VIP experience so I can meet the performers and all this, and then it cancels.
Oh,
And
no.
so then I see what's coming back. So all right, so I sign up again. I go down to the venue. The guy goes, "Oh, you're not here for that sideshow, are you?" Yeah, that canceled. So I was like,
Oh, my goodness.
but I got the name of eventually and contacted this guy who was sort of the lead guy in the sideshow. And his stage name is Short E Dangerously. And he is a half man. His body ends right at below his rib
Oh,
cage.
my goodness.
And he gets around on a skateboard or on his hands. And so if you go on his website, there's a picture of him with a mask breathing fire. And so when I got a hold of him and I said, well, I'd just like to interview you about your life. And he said, okay. And so we set up, the book had been published by this point. So we did interviews in the bookstore in Miami and in Savannah. And he asked me, said, well, do you want me to perform? Because at this day and age, sideshows, I mean, they really don't just display human oddities. I mean, people perform in some fashion. So he goes, I said, well, what do you have in mind? And he said, well, I can do push-ups. He said, if that gets the crowd going, I can do a handstand. And if I really want to blow the roof off, I'll do a one-armed handstand. I'm thinking, oh my goodness. And then he says, that game with the cups where you put a ball under a cup and you move it around, you have to guess which one it is. He said, well, he goes, I do a version of that, but I put a spike under one of the cups. Then I slam my hand down on the cup that doesn't have the spikes. And he says, if you Google magic tricks gone wrong, this is the first thing that comes up. I'm like, oh, okay. So we did that in Miami. My daughter moved the cups around and he did not injure himself. But I really enjoyed getting to know him. And I asked him, so what is it like when you walk into Walmart and everybody there is looking at you because you look different than everybody else? Because that's a lot about what Boy of Wings is about. I mean, Johnny Cruel is, he's different than everybody else. And eventually he has to come to grips with it. And so Shorty told me, he said, well, yeah, if I go into Walmart, it kind of depends on what kind of day I'm having. He goes, if it's a good day, yeah, things don't bother me. But if it's not having a good day and people said, oh, it's so good to see you today. I was like, well, why is it good to see me? I'm just like everybody else, And so he said, I'm just a survivor. I'm not an inspiration. I'm just a regular guy. And so it was really, it was really fun to meet him and talk to him. We've become good friends. When I first met him, down at that in Miami. So my wife and I go to dinner with him before we're going to be at the bookstore. And, we're sitting talking. He has to like climb up the chair to sit in it, and then sort of sits on his hand so it can be up enough on the same level we are. And we talked for a while, and he said, well, he goes, well, do you mind, this is like the most normal conversation I've had in a long time, because he said, for the last 10 years, he's been a DJ in a strip club in Daytona.
Oh my
And so like,
goodness.
okay. But he gave us a ride to the bookstore after that. And I had, he said he was going to rent a car to come down to Miami. I said, well, do you have to get a special car, hand, controls? He goes, no, no, just a regular car. And so he drives us over to the place, and he has the seat where he can sit up in the car. And then he's got these things look like big crutches that he can manipulate the pedals with.
Mm.
And so, like, wow, this is really wild. So anyway, it just goes to show how people can adapt, and that, like you said, he's he's made it work. So that again, I mean, Boy with Wings. I tell people it's partly about race, it's partly about religion, but more than anything, it's about what it means to be different.
Mm.
And I've had people ask me, so, all right, well, Mark, well, let me get this straight. So here you are, a white man born in this country in this time period, the parents who loved you and paid for your education. What do you know about being different?
Mm.
And which is a fair question. And I tell people, so why I tried to touch the spot that I think everybody knows at some level of what it's like to be on the outside looking in. And for me, that was probably middle school. I didn't have older brothers and sisters. My mother bought my clothes. So I was a nerd, Heather. I know this is hard to believe, but it's true. And
Never
and
think of
so
you as a nerd, Mark.
and I was, I've been, I remember just being ridiculed by others, kids, and just, and just sort of again being on the outside looking in. And
Sure.
so that was what I wanted to try and tap into in the book.
Mm. Well, the traveling show creates a complicated moral world in my mind. People with visible difference were displayed for money, but for some performers, those shows also offered community, work, and a place in a world that had rejected them elsewhere. How did you sit with that tension without simplifying it, though?
Well, and again, this was sort of, I'd written the book before I met Shorty, but I asked him, said, well, do you like being on stage? And he said, yes, it's one of the best parts of my life. And I think for people, this was in Johnny in the book. I mean, he goes through some hardships before he gets to the show, and suddenly he's the star. And so this is sort of, for a while at least, this is sort of he this is great. He becomes used to this, people paying attention. He's showing himself off, and people, they have different reactions to it, but it's a different sort of thing for him. And so I tried to, and there's I think rivalries within the show. Like, for instance, there were a number of performers that are just performers. The guy that breathing fire, he's going out and doing it 10 times a day.
Mm-hmm.
Where at this time, the people that were human oddities, they just come out and show themselves, and suddenly money flows. And so there's some jealousy. And in the book, Johnny has sort of a love interest, a young lady who's the daughter of the woman running the show, who is normal. She doesn't have any deformities. And she feels like she's not special. He's special. She's not. So it's a little bit of a reversal, of what, and Johnny, for almost all his life, just wants to blend in. So it's, I hope, to me, the best books are those that entertain you, but also make you think. And I hope this does both. That's my goal anyway.
Well, Boy with Wings won the grand prize for fiction from the Next Generation Indie Book Awards. Congratulations on that.
Thanks. It's interesting that the book has won awards in several different genres, which is I'm pleased about, because I think of it as sort of, it's historical fiction. It's won awards there. It's literary fiction. It's won awards there. It even won some religious fiction awards. And so I think that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to sort of, not just be pigeonholed, or this is this, or this is that. And so I'm pleased with how well it's done. It's won quite a number of awards.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, let's change gears for a second. Let's talk about this traveling that you've done 96 countries. I'm sitting there going, how in the world? Like, I'm thinking, can I even name 96 countries? At what point did this stop being travel and become a personal challenge to your passport?
Well, I think I have the wandering gene. I just like to go places I haven't been before. And the world is a huge, big place,
Yeah.
as you know. And so I've been fortunate I have some buddies from high school, and we have tried to go for a long time every year and go hiking somewhere. So we've been to Central America, been to Europe, been to Asia, Iceland, Morocco, Japan, climb Mount Fuji. So, and it's sort of, I still, yeah, I'm going, my wife and I are going to Spain in a couple of weeks here. And I've been to Spain before, but it's, again, there's a part I've never been to. And so it's interesting to me to see places and different people and cultures and just sort of expand your mind beyond just the normal thing. So I hope I get to able to do it for a long time.
Well, are you trying to reach 100? I mean, you're so close.
I think I'll get 100, but it's not really as much I mean, I've never regretted going to any of the countries I've been to, and I've been to some little ones and strange ones. But it's less the number. I mean, God, there's like 180 something countries, I think, if you count all of them. And so I just like to. I mean, like I had plans to go to Russia. I had plane tickets, hotel reservations, everything, and then the Ukraine war broke out. So I don't know now that I'll ever get there. And that, but I'd never been to China. I went last year, so that was fun. I've never been to Australia. I'd like to do that. So there's a lot still out there that I think would be interesting. I'd love to see.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, you also have strong feelings about gloriously stupid movies like Airplane, Blazing Saddles, that particular school of cinematic nonsense. So defend yourself.
Gloriously stupid. Yeah, and this is maybe why we're married. My wife and I share this, love for stupid humor. So yeah, and those were of the era when I was, teenager and early 20s. So we have a special fondness for those. And Naked Gun, we've seen all of those, and and even the Woody Allen movies we watched a lot. So yes, I still like if you put a gun to my head and said you have to name your favorite movie of all time, it'd probably be Blazing Saddles. There's just every time I watch it, there's some other craziness there that I hadn't noticed before.
Well, it's just brilliant in a lot of ways. It's kind of captures that slapstick comedy from the olden days. That was so fun.
And I wonder if they could get away with making it now because some of the stuff they said in there
Oh
is like,
yeah,
wow, this made it past the censors, huh? Okay. Anyway, it's a yeah, he is a genius. I give him a lot of credit.
that's awesome. Well, you said "Stairway to Heaven" is a song you never skip. Do you also refuse to skip the long guitar solo, or is that the entire point?
Well, I don't, Stairway to Heaven is probably, pilloried by a lot of people that, oh my God, this is like, classic rock. Do we have to hear this for the 999th time? But I just think the song, even though Led Zeppelin stole some of it from another band, it is, it is, it has just, the guitar parts are just outstanding. And the way it builds on itself, I've never gotten tired of. I think a lot of people have, but I just, if it's on, I listen to it. It reminds me of high school. I remember dancing to Stairway to Heaven. So back
Nice.
in the day. So yes, I don't, that's one I've just never gotten tired of.
You love music so much. Are you into the tribute bands? Like, Journey has a tribute band and Elton John has a tribute band.
Yeah, I'm not into that as much, although I did see Hart's version of Stairway to Heaven with the Robert Plant and Jimmy Page watching from the audience,
Oh
and
my
that was
goodness.
outstanding. So yes, I wouldn't say no, never. And I have seen an ABBA tribute band on the cruise ship one time, which my wife enjoyed a lot. I was like, okay. So now I don't follow the tribute bands that much, but maybe I should.
Well, can you imagine playing in front of Jimmy Page and Robert Plant? Oh my goodness.
Well, I know, but I mean, they had, I mean, little like tears in their eyes. I mean, it was really, you should watch the video. It's pretty awesome.
I bet. I bet. Well, Mark, there's a section of the show that we do called Quick Fire. So no overthinking counselor pulling in
Okay,
that lawyer talk there. No affidavits necessary, no legal briefs. So just whatever first comes to mind, okay?
okay.
All right, passport or library card, which gets more use?
Probably right now, passport, because I'm if you ask me, well, this is a long answer to your question, but if you said reading books, I'm reading books a lot more than I'm using the passport, but it's usually on Audible or I buying the book. So
Sure.
I haven't used the library card in a little while yet.
So write the ending first or discover it as you go.
Some of both. I usually know where the ending's going to go, but it can shift as I go through the book, and it has for most of my books.
Oh, wow. So festival director hat or novelist hat, which is harder to take off at the end of the day?
Oh, they're both pretty hard. I mean, novelist hat is with me all the time. The festival, though, never goes away. There's always some issue, problem to be dealt with. So, but writing again, I do it every day. So the writer hat's the one I think on that.
Okay. One genre you would never mix into a novel.
Well, let's see. I'm not super big on romance, novels. So I mean, I'm actually, Heather, I count myself in the minority of minorities. First, I'm a man who reads. Second, I'm a man who reads fiction. And third, I'm a man who read fiction written by women.
That's awesome.
And because there is just awesome stuff out there that, women write. I mean, true chick lit isn't necessarily my thing, but I can do that. And I'll tell you a book, it is chick lit, but it's very good, called Shark Heart. If you get a chance, read that. I thought it was very well done.
Awesome. I would love to get your top 50 books that you recommend because it sounds like you're so well read and people need to check out some of the books that you think are really well written.
Yeah, I mean, I put on I have a blog after people suggesting for years, oh, you need to have a blog, Mark. I'm like, I'm not witty enough, so I don't have enough time for a blog. I have a blog now. And so one of the posts from about a year ago was my favorite books from that year. So yeah, I probably should do another post on favorite books because I do read. I try and read 40 books a year, mostly novels,
Wow.
and I usually do. And so I've had a chance to read more this year, and read some pretty good stuff. So yeah, that's a good idea.
Well, leaders are readers and readers are leaders. That's what I teach my students. So that's a good thing. So I have to know, what is the best souvenir you have ever brought home in all of your travels?
Let's see. Well, the very first one I got was I mean, it was and I think it was a working blowgun from Peru
Oh
that,
my.
because when I went to Peru, we went down to the Amazon, which people don't really realize. I mean, the Amazon River is huge and in Peru, runs way over there. And so it's very jungly and it reminded me of like summer camp and Boy Scouts, I got this little blowgun thing and it'll actually shoot little darts. So I've still got it. Yeah, that's been 30 something years ago. So that's the one that sticks out.
Oh my goodness. Well, Mark, for the person listening who has an idea, a book, a festival, a business, a piece of music, a calling, but feels too busy, unqualified, inexperienced, or simply too late, what would you tell them?
Well, I tell them it's never too late. That, my experience, again, perseverance would be, I've been able to get an agent twice now. And each time it took me like 80 tries to get that. And so, I certainly wanted to give up. And I'm hearing the dog barking back here if you're hearing that behind me. So, but I think that's at least for me, I mean, I just kept going. There were times as a writer where I thought, do I even deserve to call myself a writer? I couldn't get anything published. I'm getting rejection after rejection after rejection. But I just kept going. And a little pat on the back helped so much. I got a little something published in this little journal that was like stapled together and blah, blah, blah. But I mean, they wanted my stuff. And that was enough to keep me going. So I think that'd be my answer on that.
That's awesome. Well, Mark, this conversation has been such a pleasure. Your life is a reminder that curiosity is not passive. It asks us to listen carefully, to read widely, to travel beyond what is familiar, to remain open to people and stories we may not immediately understand, and to keep working when the first version fails. It is easy to admire the finished book, the award, the successful festival, or the impressive resume, but behind very visible accomplishment is hidden work. Years of perseverance, revision, risk, rejection, like you were just talking about, and the willingness to begin again. Your newest novel, Boy with Wings, is available now. Listeners can learn more about you and your work at markmustian.com. That's MarkMustian.com. And they can read your writing at Must Write on Substack. Follow you on Facebook at Mark Mustian Author, and find you on Blue Sky at markmustian.bsky.social. And of course, they can learn more about the Word of South Festival of Literature and Music in Tallahassee, Florida. That sounds awesome. One day I hope my band can come and play for you. Mark,
Come on down.
Yeah. Mark, thank you for joining me on the Heather Patera Show. Is there anything that you would like to leave our listeners with today?
No, I'd say just keep going, keep writing, keep playing music, keep making the world a better place.
Yeah, that's awesome. And friend, thank you for listening. Be sure to pick up a copy of Mark's award-winning novel, Boy with Wings, and make plans to experience Word of South, which I'm going to do someday, where writers and musicians come together to create something that doesn't fit neatly into a box, which may be exactly why it works. Follow The Heather Patera Show wherever you listen to podcasts. Share this episode with someone who loves books, music, travel, unusual stories, or people who absolutely refuse to have only one career. Until next time, stay curious, keep creating, and live on purpose. This is The Heather Patera Show, where conversation meets calling. Thanks, Mark, for joining us.
Thanks, Heather. Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to The Heather Patera Show, produced by Heather Patera Studios. Connect with us on Facebook or Instagram, or visit heatherpatero.com. Until next time, stay creative and live on purpose.